Hello, class, and welcome to another exciting facilitation for this semester. I am Dr. Annie George, Department of Public Health, Faculty of Health Sciences, and will be your guide. Hope we all enjoy it. Thank you.
Hi, students, and welcome to another facilitation session on essential drugs, PHS 426. Last week, we looked at topic 2, essential drug supply management, the management of the essential drug supply system. We define what is management of essential drug supply, which is focused essentially on those attributes of essential drugs. They have to be available, they have to be not just available, but they have to be accessible, they have to be safe, they have to be cost effective, and the drugs will have to fulfill or satisfy the needs of the population. So those are the key elements that the essential drug supply system is focused on. And then we looked at when you have to make a requisition or procurement for your drugs, the processes of procurement, requisition, costing, quantifying and costing, and then the distribution mechanisms, supply of those drugs, receiving those drugs, and storage. Those are the things we looked at in the previous lesson on topic 2. So this week we will go into topic 3, the pharmacology of essential drugs in primary health care. So what are we expected to know at the end of this lesson? We will try to go into what we call the WHO model list of essential drugs, so that you know what it's all about. Understand also the steps in listing and reviewing the WHO model list of essential drugs, and also dwell into the pharmacology of essential drugs. So, WHO model list of essential drugs is regarded as the basic foundation for listing essential drug internationally. It's based on quality tests and development of reference standards. In other words, it's usually the reference point for development of essential drug list. UNICEF and other humanitarian bilateral relief agencies follow this WHO model list. There are a couple of problems with the WHO model list before it was revised in 2002, and these problems are that there are a range of diseases that are covered by the model list which are not clear. Discrepancies between the model list and the treatment guideline, the selection process of the medications on the list are of more of consensus instead of evidence-based. The use of data and cost effectiveness of such medications that are listed are unclear. Then the reasons for selection is insufficiently recorded. Drugs included without pharmacopoeia standard or supplier standard. And sometimes official report on this drug listing comes out late, and mainly in English language instead of other languages of the WHO. So what are the steps to get a new drug on the WHO model list? What steps are taken to get a drug on such a list? Remember now we have a vaccine which is being produced by different countries. Before they are shipped from the country of production after certification, how are they now listed by WHO and accepted internationally? So the steps to take in getting a new drug on the WHO model list are that starts from determining that the public health need for such a drug exists, like the vaccine. We were ravaged by COVID-19. So getting a vaccine, of course, there is a public health need to get a vaccine to take care of the COVID-19 that has ravaged the entire world. And such a vaccine or such a drug will have to go through phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 of clinical trials, and then finally approved by the regulatory agency of such a host country. Like you have Pfizer, you have Moderna in the US that was approved by the regulatory agencies, the Food Drug Administration in the US. So once they approve for emergency use authorization, such medication can now be deployed for use before what we call the final approval is given. So when emergency use authorization is given, like in that COVID, the WHO looks at what we call the post-marketing surveillance of such a medication, the price indication for public sector use, what is the price like. Now, there is a review by WHO Disease Program to define what we call the comparative effectiveness and safety in real-life situations of such a drug. Then there is a submission to WHO Committee on Essential Drugs. After the submission, there is a summary of application posted on the WHO Medicines website. It's a whole lot of processes. Then the specialist assessment of comparative efficacy, as in the drug is meant to do what it's supposed to do, it is safe, and it is cost effective. Then they review such summaries of applications and specialist assessment by expert committee member. They formulate a draft recommendation. And then that draft recommendation is also reviewed by relevant expert advisory panel members. So it's a whole process, and posted also on the WHO Medicines website. Then after that, there is a review by a presenter who prepares a final draft recommendation. And that final draft recommendation, there is a discussion on it before a proposal or a proposed test is sent to WHO model formulary by the experts committee. This expert committee looks at the treatment cost and the global cost effectiveness analysis, the cost of treatment and the global cost, not just the country that is producing it, whether it's developed country or less developed country. They look at the impact, the global costs and the treatment cost, the cost benefit analysis of such a medication before it is presented, before they present their recommendation and then report, and such a report is now publicized on the website and translated in different languages. So this brings us to the pharmacology of essential drugs. With these preambles, we'll come to the pharmacology of essential drugs. Pharmacology is basically the study of drugs and their actions. It also involves recognition, quality, purity, and identification of drugs. Pharmacology also involves what we call the pharmacodynamics, which means the drug effect on the body when there is no disease. How does this drug, pass through the body? What does it do to the body in the absence of a disease? And then what does it do to the body when there is a disease condition? That is the pharmacotherapeutics. Then, how does the body act on this drug in terms of degrading it and clearance, excretion of such a medication from the body? That is pharmacokinetics. These are all components of pharmacology. So, what are the sources of drugs that we use? There are plant sources. Drugs could be, prepared from seeds, stems, roots, leaves, like the digitalis and the opium medications are all of plant sources. We have animal sources of drugs like glandular products like insulin and the thyroid. We have the mineral sources like potassium, chloride, and lithium are all of mineral sources. Then you have synthetic sources of medications like laboratory, where they duplicate the natural processes of medications like barbiturates, the sulfonamides, and the aspirin. So let us classify the routes of drug administration. What are the routes at which drugs are administered to individuals? Drugs are usually administered through the enteral route, what we call the enteral route, the parenteral route, and other routes. Some people will call route, whether you call it enteral route or enteral route is route. So using the enteral route, we have the oral medications, we have the sublingual medications, we have the rectal medications. Now, oral medications are like tablets, you take them orally. Sublingual are placed under the tongue, and the rectal are inserted through the rectum or through the anus. So those are the routes that are called enteral route. Then the parenteral route is like giving medications intravenously through the veins, intramuscularly through the muscles, like intramuscular injections, and then subcutaneous injections, like you give some insulin subcutaneously. Then the other routes that also exist aside the enteral route and parenteral route include inhalation. Like some medications like salbutamol are passed in, are squirted into the nose. Some other medications are put into the nose through intranasally. So that's another route. Then some medications are given intrathecally or intraventricularly, like injections into the cerebrospinal fluid and all that, CSF. Such injections are intraventricular or intrathecal injections. Then you have the topical route, where you have to apply some creams on your body, like steroid creams, anti-eczema creams, are topical creams which you can apply directly to the lesion on the skin. And then transdermal is also another route. Transdermal is through the skin. Some medications are passed through the skin, like some contraceptives are injected transdermally, and they have slow release into the system, like what we call the transplants, contraceptives, So those contraceptives, implants, not transplants, sorry, it's called implants. Implant contraceptives are put transdermally, and they are squirted gradually absorbed gradually into the body to prevent conception. We've learned the WHO model list of essential drugs. We've understood the steps in listing and review systems in WHO model list of essential drugs. And we've finally understood the pharmacology of essential drugs. So in our next lecture, we'll look at essential drug lists for primary health care in Nigeria. Thank you for listening.